Hello, everyone, and welcome to Podcast Sphere. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Alex.
Today's topic is, what if the internet disappeared for 24 hours?
Oh, wow, Alex. Just hearing that sentence gives me a little bit of anxiety, to be completely honest with you.
Right? It sounds like the plot of a sci-fi movie, but it is actually a really fascinating thought experiment.
It absolutely is. Think about the very first thing you do when you wake up. For most of us, we reach for our phones to check the weather, read the news, or scroll through social media.
Exactly. If the internet went down globally for a full day, that morning routine would instantly break. No alarms sync to the cloud, no streaming music while you brush your teeth, and definitely no checking emails before breakfast.
It would be a massive shock to the system, but let's break it down into stages. What do you think happens in the first hour?
The first hour would just be pure confusion. People would be restarting their routers, turning their phones on and off, and blaming their service providers.
Definitely. Everyone would think it is just a local issue. Is your Wi-Fi working? Would be the most asked question in every household and office building.
But then, as the minutes tick by, the realization would set in that it is a global outage. And that is where the real impact starts hitting our daily infrastructure.
Yes. Let's talk about transportation and commerce. If you are trying to commute to work, how do you even get there?
Well, ride-sharing apps would be completely useless. You couldn't call a car through your phone.
And public transit systems that rely on digital ticketing or real-time tracking schedules would face massive delays. Even GPS navigation wouldn't function properly for people trying to drive new routes.
People would actually have to remember how to read physical maps, or just navigate by memory. It is crazy how much we rely on digital maps just to go a few miles away.
It really is. And imagine going to a coffee shop on your way to work. You order your latte, go to pay with your phone or a credit card, and the machine says error.
That's a huge point, Emily. Modern payment systems are almost entirely dependent on the internet. Without it, credit cards, debit cards, and digital wallets are completely knocked out.
We would suddenly have to rely entirely on cash. And let's be honest, how many people actually carry physical cash around with them these days? Exactly. I think the average person has maybe a stray $5 bill crumpled up at the bottom of their bag, and that's about it. If the digital banking system just went poof, the immediate cash shortage would cause absolute chaos. People would be lining up at ATMs that don't even work because they require a network connection to dispense money.
Oh, definitely. And even if you manage to find an old-school bank teller with a physical vault, how long does that cash reserve actually last? A day? A few hours? The moment the registers go dark at the supermarkets, the entire food supply chain grinds to a halt. You can't just swipe your card for groceries. If you don't have paper money, you're leaving that shopping cart right in the aisle.
And think about the restaurants too. Everything from fast food drive-thrus to high-end dining relies on digital point-of-sale systems. Without them, they can't track inventory, they can't take orders efficiently, and they certainly can't accept payment. Plus, how do they pay their suppliers for the next delivery of fresh ingredients?
They can't. Which means, within 48 hours, local businesses and supply chains just freeze up. Trucks stop delivering because truck drivers aren't getting paid, or they can't buy fuel. Gas stations wouldn't be able to pump fuel anyway without electricity or digital authorization. It's a massive domino effect that starts at the checkout counter and hits the entire economy instantly.
Speaking of things halting, what about public transportation? In so many major cities now, you don't even buy a physical ticket anymore. You just tap your phone or a smart card at the subway turnstile or when boarding a bus. If that infrastructure goes down, does transit just become free out of necessity, or does the whole city come to a standstill because nobody can pay their fare?
I bet it completely stalls at first. Transit authorities wouldn't know how to handle the sudden loss of data and revenue. And it gets so much scarier when you look past daily commutes and think about critical infrastructure like hospitals and emergency services.
That's the real nightmare scenario. Hospitals rely heavily on digital networks for patient records, tracking medication dosages, and coordinating emergency room incoming arrivals. If a doctor can't pull up a patient's medical history or allergy list because the cloud is inaccessible, it becomes a literal matter of life and death.
And emergency dispatches too. If the internet and digital communication networks fail, you can't just open a Maps app to route an ambulance to a house. You'd have to look at physical paper maps, assuming the fire station even has an updated one. Even calling 911 relies on complex digital routing systems. If those fail, how do you even signal for help?
It really forces you to realize how fragile our modern convenience is. Think about schools and universities too. Education has shifted so heavily online. Assignments are submitted via portals, grades are tracked digitally, and research is done through online databases. A sudden shift back to physical textbooks, chalkboards, and handwritten essays would throw the entire academic year into disarray.
Students would probably rejoice about not having to turn in homework online, but the administrative side would be a disaster. No one would know who paid tuition, who was enrolled in what class, or how to contact parents in an emergency.
And God forbid you're traveling when this happens. Imagine being at an airport. Flights would be instantly grounded because air traffic control and airline booking systems are entirely digital. You'd have thousands of people stranded in terminals worldwide, unable to rebook, unable to access their digital boarding passes, and unable to call their families to say they're stuck.
You'd see massive crowds of confused people just waiting for information that no one can give them. Because how do airlines communicate with passengers when their websites, apps, and airport display screens are completely blank? We are so used to instant updates in the palm of our hand.
Which brings up a fascinating point. How do we even communicate without the internet? We've become so detached from traditional landline phones. Most homes don't even have them anymore. If cellular data and Wi-Fi vanish, we are suddenly limited to talking only to the people who are within walking distance of our front door.
It would feel like stepping into a time machine and landing in the 19th century, but without any of the tools or knowledge that people back then had to survive. The sudden entertainment and social media withdrawal would hit people like a physical truck. No scrolling, no streaming, no instant messaging, just silence.
The psychological effects of that silence would be wild to observe. Initially, I think people would experience intense anxiety and restlessness. We are so dopamine conditioned to check our notifications every few minutes. Without that constant stream of validation and distraction, people would have to sit alone with their thoughts, which honestly terrifies a lot of modern humans.
The FOMO, fear of missing out, would ironically disappear because everyone would be missing out on everything simultaneously. But the isolation would feel very real. You'd wonder how your friends across the country are doing, and you'd have absolutely no way to check on them. That uncertainty would breed a lot of ambient stress.
But do you think there could be unexpected positive outcomes? Like once the initial panic subsides after a few weeks, wouldn't we see a massive resurgence in local community bonding?
Absolutely. Out of sheer necessity, neighbors who have lived next to each other for years without ever speaking would finally have to knock on each other's doors. You'd have to organize community trade, share resources, and check on the elderly down the block. In a weird way, physical neighborhoods would become real communities again, instead of just places where people park their cars at night.
I love that perspective. People would start gathering in central spaces, like parks or town squares, just to trade news and rumors. We'd see a massive comeback for physical board games, reading physical books, and playing musical instruments. Evenings would be spent talking face-to-face over candlelight instead of staring at separate glowing screens in the dark.
The environment would probably get a nice little breather too. With supply chains broken and digital commerce dead, manufacturing would pause, traffic would drop significantly, and energy consumption would plummet. The skies over major cities would clear up incredibly fast.
It's crazy to think about how quickly we would adapt, though. Human beings are incredibly resilient. If paper currency isn't available or loses its meaning because the system behind it is broken, we'd probably revert to a barter system. I'll swap you 3 cartons of milk from my backyard cows for that pair of shoes.
Or people would start accepting alternative forms of currency that hold intrinsic value, like canned goods, batteries, or fuel. It forces us to reevaluate what wealth actually means. Right now, wealth is just a string of numbers on a bank's server. In this scenario, wealth is having a full pantry and a good relationship with your neighbors.
It really puts things into perspective. It makes you wonder if our complete reliance on digital interconnectedness is a pinnacle of human achievement, or just a massive trap we've willingly walked into.
It's definitely a bit of both. It makes life beautiful, fast, and convenient, but it leaves us incredibly vulnerable. It shows that beneath all our sophisticated technology, we're still just social creatures who rely heavily on the immediate physical world around us to survive.
Exactly. Everything hangs by a much finer thread than it seems. We've become so integrated into the digital world that realizing how vulnerable we actually are if the system gets unplugged is genuinely terrifying.
It really is. But on the flip side, moments of crisis like that also bring out the human capacity for survival and community. Maybe a massive blackout is the only thing that would remind us of the old culture of helping one another and actually learning our next-door neighbor's name.